because everybody went, so everybody's there. Okay. Hello, good evening, welcome. Sorry, I can't hear any of you, so I'm just gonna wing this. It's foreign to me. We're gonna cover a few things before we get on with our panel discussion. Really quickly though, I do wanna read you the Antitrust compliance statement. It is the practice of the American Institute of Architects and its members to comply strictly with all laws, including federal and state antitrust laws that apply to AIA operations and activities. Accordingly, this meeting will be conducted in full compliance with those laws. Cheers. Okay. Now we are done with that part. So we'll go through, I'll talk about the committee, and then we're going to move right into the panel. So our last meeting was the end of last month on the 25th. And we had a pretty lively discussion about what's coming up for the year. So from all of that, we determined that communication was a really good topic to kick us off for the year. And just as a reminder to everyone, oh, I'm sorry, welcome to the American Institute of Las Vegas Women in Architecture Committee. So what we're going to do tonight is we'll have a panel discussion. It'll be about 35 minutes or so of the panel talking about our topic tonight. And then we will open it up to questions and answers. If you will please raise your hand, put something in the chat, and we'll pick it up. Anna can unmute you at that time. And so that's where we're going to go with that. Today is topic is communications. Next month we are sponsoring the AIA membership meeting. So we will not have a committee meeting next month, but we will we will have a meeting in April that will cover the topic of education. And that's something we're working on now. Events that are coming up, March 7th through 13th is National Women in Construction WIC Week. Some of us are participating in that. Then following that, March 17th is the membership meeting featuring Monica Chada, talking about community leadership. And yeah, that's it. Anna, anything else? Nod yes, shake your head no. Oh, I didn't mention the committee leadership, pardon me. Monica Gresser, Brazen Architecture, co-chair. Anna Peltier, co-chair, owner of Landscape, ARIA Landscape Architecture. That's funny. We had a discussion about that earlier. And our secretary for this committee and board liaison is Alexia Chen from LGA. So now, Anna, apologies. Anything else before I move on?
We do have a combo AIA NAWIC tour coming up.
Oh, we have the tour. Talk about that real quick.
So we're doing a tour of a construction project that's currently wrapping up construction for CSN. And we're going to be doing a tour of the architecture and landscape architecture on March 11th. Once we open it up for registration, we'll be sending out emails to this committee. And it's a first come, first serve. So when you see it, if you're interested, sign up. There's kind of some cool stuff that's going on out there. We've got some interesting landscape elements. I don't want to give too much away. But that will be March 11th, 3 p.m.
Super exciting. That's awesome. That'd be awesome. So to introduce tonight's speakers, panelists, we have Angelo Bugatti Chavez, who is our AIA Nevada 2020 Silver Medal winner. She would be our first woman architect in the state. We also have Brad Van Wert. Brad is Angela's partner over at Van Wert Bugatti Architects, way up there in the Northland. hinder and yawn. We also have with us, excuse me, excuse me, I was not drinking very well today, or like I should. We also have Lauren Waldron, Associate Director of Marketing. Oh man, maybe I need to go get wine. We also have Lauren Waldron, Associate Director of Marketing for SMPS. And so the topic tonight is communication. So we thought it would be interesting to talk about the differences, complementary differences between the way women and men communicate as architects to our clients, to our end users, to our staff. And then Lauren's going to also contribute with some other items like, how do you talk about that outside your firm? I have to say, Angela and Brad, one of the things that I thought was really cool when I was first looking up Angela back in December was, I get to I think it's your contact page, and there's just the two of you. And I thought, that's a really awesome image to see. I mean, when you first get on the site, of course, you talk about your projects, but I like when, you're talking about staff, there's just the two of you. And it's not like your normal headshots. It's just a really casual thing like, oh yeah, we really get along. And this is what you can, it gives you kind of a feeling of what you might get when you call up the firm and say, hey, I would like to work with you guys. So I really appreciate that. So those are the kinds of things we're going to talk about tonight. It's not, this is not intended to be male bashing. I mean, otherwise, why would we have Brad here? There's only so much a person can take. Oh, Superman, sorry. And then it's also not meant to be female bashing. So it's a complimentary, it's a discussion about complementary attitudes towards communication. So with that, who's going to take off first?
Oh, I think any one of us probably could. Lauren, I don't know if you want to, or you want to let us try it.
It's going to be very casual, people.
Okay.
I
think Brad has a couple of things to start us off with.
Yeah, I've the only guy here. I hope there's some guys in the room, right, to help me out here. But I think a little history might be appropriate, just to kind of give everyone the background of who Brad and Angela are, and what our firm is, and everything else, and then kind of talk about our relationship, and it'll give you a really good idea. All right, so there's at least one other guy. We're looking good, right?
We saw you, Travis.
Yeah. So anyway, Van Wert Pagodi and all its other name iterations was founded in 1975. So we're 46, we're pushing 50 years old now. And I've been at the firm for all but 2 of those years. So I've seen it all. So you're going back into the 70s right now. And I can tell you, as far as if we were going to kind of wrap our arms around communication, there was not a woman in sight in 1977. Every firm had one woman, and that was the secretary. And she was there to take phone calls and transfer and do all that sort of thing. And the way we communicated, it was a man's world. And it was, my coping mechanism through time has been through humor. And there's like 3 kinds of humor, right? And I have them all. And the salt is, for me, is kind of British wit, right? It's a wry humor. And it goes a long way for, making people comfortable and such. Then there's sarcasm, which is the pepper, right? And I have a little bit of that. Then the third one is just being crude, right? And that's what men had. And if I were to talk today the way I talked back then, or we talked back then, I'd be in jail with Harvey Weinstein right now. I mean, if the Me Too movement had started in the late 70s and 80s, it would be like a whole different ballgame. It was just a different culture. And the women they were pushing up this glass ceiling that they would just never be able to penetrate. And I won't say that our firm was pioneering, but Angela came to us in 1992. So she and I have been together for nearly 30 years practicing architecture. And she came in, you have to know about us a little bit. I'm at the time that I came in, I was made a partner in like 1979. And I was the boy wonder. I had the boyish charm, and I was doing all the design. I was like the glamour boy. It was like really cool. Our founding partner, Jack Sheehan, was kind of running the business, and these were fun times. I was young, full of energy and such. Well, in 1992, Angela came in, and it was basically Jack's idea. We had 1 or 2 women in a firm of about 13, 14, or 15 people. Angela came in and she interviewed, and her portfolio was stunning. It was like unbelievable, intimidating actually. And I don't know that I really wanted to hire her, but Jack did. And he was the pioneer, right? And the story goes on, and I'll tell it as quick as I can. But I think at the time we offered her $11 an hour. She said, no, I want 13. And I said, no, you get 11. It was just me and her. She says, well, okay, adios. And she left. She went back to Arizona. So she's from Arizona State. And her nickname is the hyperventilating grasshopper, right? And I mean, the energy that she had was, it's palpable. You could just feel it in the room. And I went to school in the Pacific Northwest at Oregon. And my nickname is Buddha, right? We kind of touched and feel things and did all that sort of thing. And our approach to design and such was a lot different. But we coexisted between she and I in a very cordial and professional manner. I mean, I liked her, she liked me. But she was starting to do some design, and our conduit for our communication was Jack Sheehan, our partner. He was my best friend and my mentor. And I'd talk to him. I'd say, well, hey, you got to go talk to Angela about this. And Angela would come in and talk to him. And she'd say, you got to go talk to Brad about this. And we had this existence that was pleasant, right? But pretty soon, you know, you could start to see her talent come out in her energy. And her energy, it was annoying, right? I mean, it was so, her passion for architecture was haunting, like a annoying friend, right?
You can leave now.
Yeah, no. And so we kind of put up with each other, and we started to share our designs and things of that nature and communicate. And I'd go upstairs into the loft where she was, and she'd have white tracing paper, and she's just drawing lines, and she'd crumple up tracing paper and throw it on the floor, and she'd draw another line and throw it on the floor. And I'd go over to her desk, and it's like walking through a miniature sea of Frank Gehry buildings, right? You know, just like all this crumpled up paper and such. And there's slashing lines on the plan, and she'd say, what do you think? And I go, yeah, I think a little more investigation is appropriate. Let's talk a little bit later, right? And I'd go back, and my design style was I wouldn't do anything. You'd walk into my office, there's nothing there. Buddha would kind of think things out. He'd almost get into a Zen meditative way, and I could figure out the whole building in my head, and I'd draw the plan. I could draw the plan on the first shot. It was meticulous with these razor felt tip pens and things like that. And she'd come into my office. She'd say, hey, what are you doing here? And I'd have my plan out there, and she'd grab the most gooshed out Sharpie. Well, what if you did this? If you turned it 45-degree angle, like, oh my God. She did like ruin my drawing that I spent hours on, right? And I could say, this, I don't know how this is even gonna work, right? So 2 things happened with our relationship there. It was like, one, the slashing lines on my plan were correct. She was right, it had to be done. The thing that was really maddening is I had to draw the plan over again, right? So we coexisted this way, and the firm was pretty successful. We were doing things. And the tragedy became our greatest hope, in that Jack Sheehan, our founding partner, passed away from cancer in like 2005. So it wasn't the 3 of us anymore. It was just the 2 of us, Angela and I. And we had to talk to each other. I'm going, And the way we talked to each other became kind of a big deal. And we didn't know, like, if we're gonna make this, I don't know if I can do this. And I don't know that it was the man and woman thing, or it was our cultures or the way we did business and things of that nature, but it was what we had. And we looked at each other and said, I think we can do this, knowing full well that we were probably going to be the first partnership in the state of Nevada that had a man and a woman as equal partners in a larger firm. And, you know, there have been women architects through the ages, right? They say that Imhotep, the Egyptian architect, might have been a woman, right? And there was Julia Morgan, and there was Sarah Harkness with the Architects Collaborative. Zaha Hadid, turned the profession upside down, right, for all of us. Jeannie Gang out of Chicago. I mean, she's killing it there, right? Julie Snow out of Minnesota. So the precedent is set for women in architecture. And then a lot of the couples, the people that are together are husband-wife sort of thing. And they tend to, how they do it, I have no idea. They can go to work and then go home and do the same thing. But to that end, we set our firm in direction. And I say this with ever so slight exaggeration, but I think it's true, that within the year that we decided to go together, we changed the name to Van Wert Pagodi. It's just the two of us. We knew that we would be Brangela, you might say, the two of us doing work together. We said we committed that we would design together, we'd go to meetings together, that this is who our firm is going to be. And we interviewed for 11 projects and we got 10. This is like no joke. And the 11th one we didn't want, it was a lousy project. And we figured out, well, that could work. And through time, our bandwidth narrowed, because there are, especially in the private sector, chauvinism isn't the word to say, but some of them don't cotton to a woman being in charge or have equal standing. And we've had to battle through that through these last 15 or 16 years that she and I have been like going after this as a man and woman partnership. But it has worked. The way we communicate and the way we now communicate to our clients with Angela in the room as a leader has had a palpable and profound effect on how we run our business. And I'm going to say it's been successful. So, I mean, that's us. And today, at Van Wert Pagodi, we have 12 people, 9 of them are women. And it's awesome. They know the computer better. They have better skills. They're more directed, and they're highly educated, and they're playing in the architectural sandbox with passion. And I really enjoy it, So we went from an all male firm to basically a predominantly female firm with a couple of guys. The transition has been hard, and I'll tell two stories here. Within maybe even the last 5 years that it's not a battle, but it'll kind of set the tone to maybe how we can start to talk about communication and such. But we'll do a project and we'll go to our client and we'll be in the car going to a meeting and says, well, how do you want to do this? You want to present? And Angela goes, yeah. So we present this thing. She'll talk for a half an hour and it's eloquent, it's with passion. And we throw the plans out, we give this presentation and she ends her presentation. And the client looks over and he looks over at me and goes, well, what do you think, Brad? And it's startling that they still almost need this male buy-in to what they feel is happening. I don't know why and I don't know how. And in the old days, I would take the same half hour that Angela would take and I'd repeat almost everything and go through it. And the client would go, oh yeah, now I get it. I really get it, right? And that is the battle of communication between a man and a woman in this in a male-dominated field that we have to get through somehow. And Van Wert Pagodi has done it, but it hasn't been easy. No more than 2 or 3 years ago, Angela was running simultaneously 2 middle school projects, total value like $150 million. And project architect, manager, project principal, everything going to all the OAC meetings. And she and I had a meeting afterward on one of the days there was an OAC meeting, which I had not been to. And I walked into the job trailer and the place went quiet. And everyone said, oh, there must be a problem. The guy showed up today, right? And that stigma bothers me to this day of how we still have to change that and how the women in our profession have to have the stature, regardless of their education and their experience, to go forward in our profession. I'll end my talk, and then I'm not going to say anymore. I said I would just be like Abbott and Costello. I'll be the dumb guy, whoever Abbott and Costello is, and say my piece, and then let the women kind of talk about their plight in the profession, how they have to communicate and things like that. But
Well, I think it's a good,
yeah,
it's a good foundation, I think. And Monica, is it all right if I talk, or do you want to move on with some questions? Keep talking. Okay, so I guess what I'll say on the heels of what Brad's saying is that we have the practice of architecture, and there's complexity of communication within that, right? Whether it's different genders or just in and amongst it. We have a very complex profession, period. I don't know if there's non-complex professions. The one we're in is it's got a lot of different aspects, right? A lot of left brain, a lot of right brain, a lot of collaboration, a lot of individuality. It's all over the place. And within that, there's the practice of communication, right? And then I call it the practice of just being. And I say that because after doing this for 30 years, and you've heard what Brad has said, you know, there's a point where you can get too caught up in doing everything right, or doing everything the way somebody else is doing, whether it's a mentor or a guy, or you know, right now, you know, there's a lot of women coming into the profession who have more women ahead of them. So they have some role models in that whole feminine contribution to the communication process. And I like to call it more authenticity, right? If you can find your authenticity in this profession so that you can be who you are at your feminine core, because there's a place for it. As Brad said, in our firm, we're actually 80% women now. So now there's a different kind of tipping of the boat, right? And we can see where women bring a unique difference to the process. They're uniquely different in their energy. We're uniquely different in our communication styles, and really the sensibilities are different, right? So if we can find yourself, first of all, it's your authenticity, your body language, which is really, you know, can you feel yourself comfortable in this profession? Can you feel yourself comfortable in a room full of men? Because it still happens. And now I'm finding myself in a room full of younger men. So now I'm not just the woman, I'm the only one over the age of 50, right? Sometimes. So I think whenever you're in a situation where you notice a dynamic, you have to be able to read the room. You have to be able to know your place in the room, and then just be respectful, right? I mean, find the comfort zone, be respectful, own who you are. We're here to do a job. I like to think of us as a non-genderist profession. And I think that I've thought that right from the beginning. I was a little bit delirious, I think, because I came into it in 1992. And I think that, you know, as a woman who came from a construction background, my grandfather, my uncles, my father, all in construction, I didn't even think twice about, oh, I'm a woman. I just chose the construction industry. I chose to be an architect, right? So I think that I kind of naturally came into it sort of owning the position, not the woman in architecture. You know, I was going to save this for the end, but I really think we need to be thinking more non-genderist. We have so many different kinds of people that are attracted to our profession now, and who are welcomed into this profession. And, you know, we're women in architecture, and no offense to this organization, because I think that there's a place for us still. I almost think we should be, you know, we in architecture, right? Versus women in architecture. I love that there's men on the phone. Thank you for supporting us and listening in and listening to some of our challenges, right? And Brad's right. It was difficult, and it still is difficult to be the woman and still have a layer of people who still get eye contact with him. I could be leading the design, you know, leading the charge, leading the discussion, whatever it is. And some people, and I will say most of it's age-based. I'm sorry, but it is. There's a generational shift, right? And I just think you can't put too much attention on any of it, right? If you want inclusion, then you got to include yourself. If you want segregation, then keep talking about the separateness and keep coming into the room feeling like you're separate. I'll tell you what it'll do, and it's the wrong way to do it. It'll set up the notion of like almost a competitiveness or, you know, a less than or better than. It's important to find that middle ground and that comfort zone. So that's all I will say, that, you know, bring yourself forth and contribute your intellectual and creative energies. And I think that the rest of it will take care of itself.
Yeah, I think you got it when you said architect, right? I've thought about this many times, that architect is non-genderous, it's neutral, right? They're not architectresses and they're not architectors, right? It's kind of like in the acting profession. There were actors and there were actresses. And I don't know what they did, but now everyone's an actor. Meryl Streep turned into an actor. So they almost gave her a male type gender, right? But she's a female actor. Well, in architecture, entablature and fascia and pilotis and insulation, they're non-genderous. And I know that when Angela and I talk and we communicate and we design together, we talk about architecture. We talk about it in that neutral context. And it's a safe place to be, and it's an important place to be.
And I think, Lauren, when you talk, I don't know if you can talk a little bit about the male and female energy, right? I mean, at our core, we are just different. We are made different from the creator, right? Yeah. And you can have any gender choice in and of itself. I mean, we're in 2021. There's layers. There's totally different choices, right? But we as human beings, we carry a feminine energy and a masculine energy. And you got to be authentic. If you try to be a man, you're not. It's like a man trying to be more sensitive. Brad and I talk about it all the time, estrogen, right? If he tries to be too sensitive, it's like, that's not working. We need you to be stronger. We need you to be your strong self, right? And sometimes there's a place for me to go softer, right? So I don't know if, Lauren, you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I was just going to give a little bit of background and kind of where my perspective is too in the conversation as well. I am the Associate Director of Marketing at S&PS HQ, and we represent predominantly a very large female membership demographic. And of course, by nature, marketing, communications, even public relations is a very female dominated profession, and a profession within the architecture, engineering, and construction, or AEC, or design build industries. AEC and within itself tends to be a bit more traditional, like most professional service firms. In previous conversations, I've told Brad and Angela, my background is within communications, within the broader professional services world. I actually served in a public relations component at an AmLaw 100 law firm. So also a very kind of male dominated professional services world, and in a marketing, in a communications role within a professional services firm, we are a support role to technical staff or to the subject matter experts. So, I think being in a Marcom role, for short or in short, is a really unique place to be, kind of within AEC and, representing projects and clients, and of course, principals and our partners who we're working so closely with. So, I think we have a different role to play in the conversation. And Angela, I think you relayed this earlier, and that is the collective perspective of working together, that we don't, see gender as a separation, but rather as a way to unite our projects and our creativity within design build, and even within marketing and communications, which is also a very creative profession as well, supporting creativity within architecture, engineering, and construction. So, I think from a communication standpoint, there's obviously external messaging, kind of internal messaging within a firm, and even just personal professional conversations. And, I think that women have to be a bit more cognizant at times in communicating internally as to make sure that collective language is used. For example, we, not I, but we are working on a project. That is something moving forward that, I am very hopeful, and of course I'm a young professional, but I am very hopeful that, will change and that we won't have to rely on unique communication or pronouns, et cetera, to really relay a message and be that intentional in what we are saying, but rather be confident in being authentic and just owning who we are. And I just think that that is so important as we move forward and really shape this conversation. So.
Yeah, I think that's well said, Lauren. Is there questions that are coming, Monica, or do you want us to just continue to talk? Because I'm sure we're all three of us are full of enough. We could keep going.
Sorry about that. I had to find my mute button.
Okay.
So some of the things that we're curious about are like the different negotiating tactics you guys might use. Like Brad kind of touched on it earlier, but like Angela, when maybe you're in the room and what does that look like from your point of view? And also things like your firm is roughly 80% female. Like what's the difference in leading those teams? And do you also have heavy female engineering, or are you still dominantly male there?
Interesting. I'll start with the end because I will say we've noticed a large difference, big difference in the last 5 to 6 years. We've both been noticing it. Brad was saying, that we have the mayor is a woman. The heads of a lot of these agencies are women. They're actually asking for me as the principal. They're asking at times, it's not just an assumption that Brad would lead a principal role and I'll be the designer or vice versa. They're starting to, it's just different. And I think that when we started seeing women coming into construction in leadership roles, management roles, and I'm telling you, they rock just as much as men do, sometimes differently, right? It's not like they're better than the men. It's just that I think a lot of organizations are we are 2021. I said it was generational. We've evolved as a culture as a whole. Mm-hmm. And I just think there's more equality just based on it organically finally happened. And, I'll be the first one to throw up the pom-pom because it was hard for the first 30 years. And as far as the negotiation, I don't know, sometimes I play the bad cop or I'll say, masculine energy, and Brad's like, well, let's soften it up a little bit here. So that's where I say, and Lauren, you're saying it too, it's an authenticity. Yeah. And I think that when men and women are partnered, if you're just talking about the partnership that Brad and I have enjoyed for 2 decades, I think that we've learned each other, right? That's what I was saying about reading the room. I can almost know exactly when he's going to say something. And I think he knows when I am. And it's all but nudging each other under the table, okay, we're going to pull back here. Okay, go forward. And you kind of just have to find that rhythm, that harmony. And I think it can happen between the partners. I've seen it happen with contractors. I'm so enjoying the construction process because the respect is in the room. And I will say, you either earn it and command it or you don't. And I don't say command as in demand, right? But Lauren, you were saying that authenticity of who you are as an intellectual, as a creative, if you can come into the room knowing what you can contribute to the whole, the we, I think things almost naturally start to take care of themselves.
I agree. And, I think too that, and I know that we've kind of touched on this as well, just in previous conversations, but I do think that, in a virtual or even in an in-person, of course, prior to a global pandemic, but in any sort of external communications or a presentation or a shortlist interview, for example, that having conversations, visual conversations of some sort, and really seeing body language and how women kind of navigate body language, even with regards to external communications, not just verbally what we're saying, but how we present ourselves versus our male colleagues, regardless of seniority level and or experience. It's just very interesting to kind of see those differences. And, again, just having worked in marketing and communications, I think I come to the table differently than probably some of my other colleagues do. I tend to be very cognizant, of course, not closing, my arms as to come across defensive or that I'm not comfortable. However, that's also the, public relations, guru within. So, I think we all approach, those conversations and just circumstances differently in situations. But I think too, that's just another good example of different modes of communication. So.
Yeah, the perception, is everything.
Mhm.
And in the old days, Angela and I were playing around with the screen a little while ago, right? And the perception in the old days was like this.
Yeah, right. Seriously,
Right?
like I would stand back. I would submit almost, right?
Yeah, and I must say, to my detriment, it's now like this. Right?
Not well.
And
We know
so,
when to. We
yeah,
know.
but
when.
what we try to do is we come in as equals,
Mhm.
and we offer equal creativity to the task that we're managing, and we have to be cognizant of what we're doing all the time, of who's speaking and in what tone, and when I can use my humor and when she can be serious and when she can hyperventilate and when I can be Buddha or whatever. That I won't say we practice at it, but we've done it enough to where we know how we need to be perceived, or we want to be perceived through the course of a negotiation. I mean, for a fee, for an explanation of a design, for the implementation of a design. And it's an awareness that I think, at least I, as the older male in the profession, didn't even think about in the old days. And now I have to be totally cognizant of what's around me, who's in the room, and to honor that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think that's the key. Like, how do you stay aware? Some of the questions that are rolling in here, and I appreciate those, or the commentary. It's been interesting for us to prepare for this because we are just who we are. We've both fumbled the ball, right? We've both ticked each other off. There's times where it's like, hey, don't do that anymore. That doesn't work for me, right? And you got to be willing to say that in any healthy relationship, whether it's the partner again, or the contractor, or anybody else. And that's the open communication, right? You have to come to the table open, right? To listen, carefully listen, know when it's your turn to talk. And I think that it's so fluid. We don't really have a formula, right? It's really just being. That's why I say I come back to, it's the practice of just being. And I'm sorry if that sounds lame, and I don't know that's the best, I think, contribution we can have to today is helping everybody understand you're an architect first in this profession. You are your gender second, right? And you can be that as an architect, and you should be that. You certainly shouldn't be wearing somebody else's shoes. Wear your own, and feel very good about that. And then kind of edify each other, right? Well, a lot of times we'll come to the table and he'll say something positive about me. I'll say something positive about him. All of a sudden, the people on the other side of the table I think that it earns their respect. They see that we're unified, which is really key in communicating, right? If we've ever come across vying for different sides of the table, I think we have learned that very well. There's times we disagree. I mean, it's clear. And we're respectful how that lands for anybody else in the room, right? I think that's a key point as well.
Yeah. And I think too, Angela, this was something that, you know, we also had talked about earlier, I think you had mentioned earlier, but that is, you know, the importance of owning your voice in the conversation. And I just think, I mean, I have always been the type of personality, at least, that generally tends to not have, you know, many reservations about, you know, sharing feedback or providing feedback. And yes, that can be, you know, taken with some laughter as well. But, you know, I just think I've always owned my voice in the conversation. I've just never been afraid to express feedback or direction, or if something should be done differently, or if something could be improved, or even if a project that I'm working on could be improved or critiqued or adjusted. But I think we all just need to be very comfortable in having those conversations. And, you know, I find that, again, just kind of being, you know, a young professional, that there are, you know, there are conversations, I think, where, you know, that type of just kind of candid feedback is appreciated and welcomed, and recognized that, you know, someone just isn't afraid to actually provide, of course, professional direction and communication, and just, you know, have a seat at the table, or, you know, have a seat at the conversation, or voice in the conversation. And I think that's just extremely important. And, you know, I find, I don't know if it's the old analogy, no good deed goes unpunished, but because of that repetitive behavior, it has afforded me the opportunity to have more opportunities to have a voice in the conversation. And if there is just one recommendation or one piece of advice that I can offer men, women of you know, of any seniority level, or you know, kind of perspective in the conversation within, you know, AEC, you know, it is just to own your voice, and, you know, not be afraid to provide feedback, and to provide professional direction, and have a voice in strategy and planning and strategic planning, and all of those types of conversations. So that would just be my one piece of advice and recommendation to, and just, you know, moving forward and in these types of conversations.
Yeah, I really like that, you know, and the one thing that I've noticed, right, it's, and it's taken a long time in our profession, but there are more women entering the profession. You know, there's a whole dynamic out there now, like Angela was saying, up here in the north, the mayor of Reno is a woman, the superintendent of schools is a woman, the president of TMCC, the community college, is a woman, the county manager was a woman until just very recently, and it was the president of the board of the school district and such. There's this natural order. The women are being put in places of high management, and the communication that you have to have in that setting has to be taken on, right? And I was so pleased that this year's AIA Nevada Awards, whereas not only Angela being the first woman to bestow the silver medal, which is the highest honor in the state, but I think 4 out of the 5 service awards all went to women. There may not have been a guy.
No, there was.
Was one guy?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, whatever.
Well, also, yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't totally leave you out.
Like this, right?
Advances.
Oh, yeah, all right. Right.
But you know, no, it was noticeably unique.
Yeah.
I don't know if there'll be a pattern of that. I kind of think it's just, again, it's just evolution. It's the way it's going to go.
Yeah.
And before we go into questions, because I think Monica, you might want to move us there. We're all 3 chatterboxes here. So I will say, you know, the question is, what do you do? What's successful? about my communication style, maybe as a woman, right? And again, it's hard to say, is it just me or is it because I'm a woman, right? But I can say what not to do because I've done that. And I bet you most of the women on the screen have their own stories about what works and what doesn't work, right? Especially those of us who are a little bit further in the generation count here. But you don't want to walk in with your chest out, and I'm not saying, I mean, it's like an energy, right? You don't need to go dominate. You don't need to be louder to be heard. In fact, I'm actually heard more when I go soft, right? And you don't need to go in and shake somebody's hand like you're, the Amazon woman. It's okay to be who you are in this profession, especially now. I think it was a little confusing. Monica might be able to understand, there was a time where it was like, you look to your peers, how do you dress? How do you act? Where's the body language? No, and the jokes, those are even different nowadays. It's
Yeah.
way more respectful. I like that. And I don't know if the rest of you feel that way, but I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. I think that's a good point here. I don't think that we really got the whole answer in terms of your engineering team. So, and I think that comes to me because I find that more of my consultants are also women. For some reason, still not MEP, but every now and then you run into them. But structural engineers are, and landscape architects are.
Yeah, I would say we've got them across the board. We've got
You do.
probably our A team electrical is that is woman owned.
Angel.
Our A team, one of our A team mechanicals is woman owned. I would say with Angela Fuse, she went to the city, but she was one of the owners as a planner in a civil engineering firm. Yeah, Reno might be catapulting ahead of where it's going on down there. Not sure, but we have a lot of women leaders up here, and we have them. They've earned our respect to the nth degree. Very, very, very dependable and very pleasant to lead with.
Yeah, I see that we locally, I think that you see more and more of that here as well, just in general leadership, not just as architects. But I do find it interesting that we have changed a lot. I started off in school in the late 80s, very late 80s. And then I dropped out for a while, went to work and so when I was first in school, I was one of 5 women in a class of 100. And then when I went back to school 4 years later, I walked into studio and there were 3 women in 15. And I thought, wow, that is a big change. So I do appreciate that there are more women coming into architecture. I think that that's also a really interesting sign. I don't know about sign. I wonder about our approach. Oh, my glasses are glaring. I wonder about our approach as well. I've been accused of super multitasking, whether that's good or bad. And I think some people are better at it than others. And sometimes I have to be reined in to not multitask so much. But I am curious about some of the ways that you guys are. What am I after here? And more on how you might start promoting more of that female energy. I mean, again, realizing that you're already heavy on the female side in your firm, but do you see that becoming like something, or maybe Lauren sees something happening in the industry? I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
I was going to say, I would even take, just on a micro level, our internal marketing team at headquarters. And, I think we are extremely unique in that, again, to represent predominantly a female membership nationally and even internationally. We have international chapters as well. I think our internal headquarters team is kind of a unique makeup in that our chief marketing officer is actually a male, and our marketing team, the 3 team members are female. And I think we also do a really good job of just having natural, organic conversation. I'll take during our team meetings, for example, everyone's voice matters. Everyone's voice is heard. Everyone's voice is taken into consideration. And, I think it's also too just the nature of marketing and communications being extremely collaborative in general, but also within the culture of SMPS, we are very collaborative. We are highly collaborative. And so, I think we just do a really good job in working together and not having conversations around, will you work a certain way or you communicate a certain way based upon gender. We're just all owning our piece, a part of a project or on a project.
Yeah, our firm, we are female heavy, but we didn't used to be, right? And this is where I went from wry to sarcastic to pretty crude, but our firm a while back was, I called it, and with slight exaggeration, we were the firm of the newlywed and the nearly dead, right? And we had all these young stallions or fillies, I'll call it. And we had these old men. I mean, all the old guys, all the men were older because that's how they entered the profession. They were hard at it and they've all retired now. They're gone. And we've hired up, but we hire what we think are really, really good, talented architects. And they happen to be women right now. We want the best. And it's turning out that some of the women that come in, man, they are good. They're hot. They just, they
Not
haven't
hot like you think.
No, some of them are pretty hot.
Oh, no.
He did not just
All right.
say that.
I'm going to jail, right?
So let me save you here. So Keith has a question
Off the record.
for Angela and Brad. Have you changed your mentoring in your staff, over the course of all these years? Like, you have male and female interns, right? So, like, do you think you've had to make adjustments for that, or have you thought,
Yeah.
what are you looking at for that? Plus, are you doing? We have things like paternity, maternity.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
also a big deal for women.
A little
Yeah.
bit, but I would say that there was no mentoring from the woman to the man for a long time.
Okay.
And I'll say that because most of the men were over like 20 years older than me. So to mentor them, I will say that probably came from me just mentoring them about design, because a lot of them were not formally trained. So they came up through the grandfather clause. They were more kind of hands-on, technicians. So they seem to have had a respect for me on the design level because they didn't have that skill. But I don't think it was a mentoring. It wasn't like I was teaching them how to be a better designer. I think that, and then I would say, the younger generations, I think they just benefit from two different viewpoints. I do think that women might gravitate to interview with us because I'm on board as a principal. We've speculated about that. We know that, one of our employees, Danielle Fabry, who, she came on board in 2000, right after I become a principal. She actually came right out and said, I chose you guys because you have a female principal. So she liked our work, but at the time, I don't even know if we had a website. So yeah, I do think that naturally comes into play, Monica, that there is a different mentoring on both of our parts. But I can't put my.
Are you making a conscious effort in some ways? Like when you think about different.
Yeah, I mean, mentoring is subliminal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in the old days, a man, like my way of mentoring our younger kids was like, I give them enough rope to hang themselves, right? And then take the noose off, come back, we'll talk for 5 minutes and go do it again, right? And you kind of learn by doing, and I won't say it's the man's way, but it's a more the nonverbal communication and things of that nature. And I see Angela can mentor through dialogue, can have a conversation. This is the way I do it. There's a lot of narrative to that. And together, I think we are successful in bringing our staff up to the level that they need to be, or understanding who we are and how we do our work, and how we need them to interpret what our ideas are on a certain project and that sort of thing. So I think the style is different. The outcome, I think, is the same, but there is a difference there. And I think our staff they get both barrels, right? Which might be a good thing. I don't know.
So those are those things that you've written into your HR?
No.
No.
We have-
Everybody is generic.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too, over time. The main statement in our employee manual goes to everybody, man or woman, no matter what. And I basically am the one who says it. And I said, you know what I want out of you every day is 8 hours worth of work. I mean, that's your obligation to us and to our company, right? And it's pretty interesting because for some people, it actually only takes about 6 hours for them to do 8 hours worth of work. Sadly, there are others, it takes 10 hours for them to do that work. But everybody in our staff knows what a full day's work is, that they've done their work, they've contributed, they've been creative, they've communicated or whatever. And once our staff kind of knows that, it's a really nice environment to work in, where everybody knows what their worth is, the work that they're doing, and the value of that work,
Yeah.
which I think is really cool.
Monica, not to out ourselves, but I'll out ourselves a little bit. Van Wart Bigoti doesn't have a whole lot of formal structure of you will do it this way, you will do it that way. Here's how we talk to this person. Here's what Brad's going to contribute. Here's what Angela's going to contribute. We don't. And we look at ourselves. I feel like we sound a little silly right now, because I don't know how we're answering the questions, if they're accurate.
I have the same thing. Mine's not super formal either.
Yeah, we don't. And I think that I've actually heard of people who are more formal, and I guess it works for them, but that doesn't work for us. Now, we are getting some people who want more of that. So we're having to sit down and go, okay, well, how are we going to do that, Brad? And we have to figure that out, because some people are yearning for that, right? And we have been talking a little bit more about how to disseminate some of our dynamic. Brad mentioned it back when we became Van Wart Bigoti. We were on a 3-hour trip from Battle Mountain. And, we were starting to see where maybe we needed to be more specific on our marketing approach, because we had those 10 or 12 projects coming in, and we really wanted, a lot of the projects were perfectly suited for our capabilities. And it was, I don't know, halfway, maybe we were in Winnemucca. And I think I looked over and I said, what if we just really played up the fact that we do have this sort of unique kind of one generation apart, a gender apart, and we can talk about the collaboration and the balance that brings to who we are. And we didn't make it a big marketing ploy. We just realized that's who we are. And that, again, goes back to the broken record of authenticity. I don't think anybody can really stage themselves to be, Brad and Angela or somebody. You just have to find your way.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, and again, approaching this from an internal and external perspective, and to clarify, meaning kind of internal S&PS HQ staff meets membership externally. We externally within the membership have noticed a huge demand, a significant demand for additional mentorship opportunities and programming around professional development that the society provides to our members. And I think that just speaks volumes with where we are, of course, in the profession, in the industries, and also, taking into consideration that we are going through a global pandemic and the need is mentorship still. I just think that is fascinating. And what S&PS has done is to meet the needs of our members. And again, to provide that professional development, we have actually partnered with a third-party organization called Ambition in Motion. And it's a unique way of looking at mentorship. And it's actually horizontal mentorship, meaning that there's no hierarchy. So it's not supervisor to employee, or someone with more senior experience to young professional, newly minted professional, etc. But it is if it's a group of senior level AEC marketers and business developers, it's everyone at that same level or similar level of experience. Or if we're looking at a group of newly minted AEC marketers and business developers, then it's at that specific level. And, you know, these are pairings that take place as a result of an assessment. There's, you know, kind of some data that goes into the pairings. And then these are kind of smaller cohorts, if you will, that, you know, meet as a cohort twice within the 6-month program. And again, these pairings can still take place even after the programming ends. But I think that, you know, I just wanted to highlight that we are seeing from a trend standpoint within the profession that there is a very significant need for mentorship at all levels. And then internally, you know, I think I will too just kind of speak to even me participating on the panel, but that is that, you know, our chief growth officer, who is a female and a leader, you know, tapped me to be a panelist on and a part of this particular conversation. So I think we look at mentorship by providing opportunity. And I think, Brad, that's too what you were talking about as well earlier. So.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. Sorry, I was had to get off camera for a second. Thank you for that, Lauren. I think that's a great thing. But I want to real quick. I want to circle back around to the authentic self because I got a text question. How about that? So Angela, what should a young professional do when one is criticized for being one's authentic self? It seems that certain types of comments from women are taken differently by men. We see men make similar comments, but they seem much more acceptable in the work setting.
Oh, that's very, 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 very good question. Whoever.
What?
Yes. There is, you know, there's some programs I've actually taken and they're out there. I can send them back through to you, Monica, if you'd like, you know, on just women relating to men and men relating to women. And if you dig into that a little bit, you'll understand the psyche behind men and women. So I was talking actually this morning to a civil engineer. It's a man. And we were talking, I have this idea that I sketched up, right, and sent it over to him. And he, you know, he's really, really, really wanting it to work, right? You could just tell he's really wanting to make that work. And he's talking about, I really want to make that work for you. I really want to be able to pull this off for you, right? Well, there's a nature in men, whether we believe it or know it or acknowledge it or not, men just want women happy, okay? And that's worked for me and against me. It works for me because men are just like, they really want to make it work, the ideas, right? And sometimes it backfires, right? They'll come back around and they'll work at it too hard and I won't read between the lines. This is not going to work, right? So you can waste the time. So you have to be able to be respectful of that guy, understand why his motive, because the back of his brain tells him this is just the way they're working, right? Men work this way, is that they just want to make people happy, people in general, but women in particular, right? So the authenticity in that is acknowledging the respect for that man. Okay, there's a time to cut bait, right? And when I talk about authenticity, I'm losing the question. Monica, repeat the question because I don't want to get too far off track. I can do that.
All right, the question, hold please. The question is, it seems that certain types of comments from women are taken differently by men. And we see men make similar comments, but they seem much more acceptable.
Yes, thank you for bringing me back. So when Brad and I have done this, we're on site, you know, and I learned from him. He was my mentor. That's all I had. I did not have any women before me. And so Brad, as a way, like most men, they can throw their elbows around and chump guys, right? And when a woman does that, it can be offensive. You have to really dial it into the female language, the female tone. And because otherwise it can be offensive to the man, because I don't know how to explain that any different than that. It's just you can't be a man, you're a woman. And you just need to know what you got to be, you can say and what you can't say. A guy is different than a gal. And actually, how else do I say it? I don't know if I'm explaining that very well.
Yeah.
You know, Brad has said, I just don't think you need to be so soft and so apologetic sometimes. I said, oh no, you don't get it, Brad. If I go in there and I direct like you do, I get called a pushy person. There's another word there.
Yes,
But
there is.
There's a grace and finesse that women need to own because we're women, and it works for men. And frankly, it works for women. You know, I couldn't go into my female employees and talk to them the way Brad does. It wouldn't work.
But I also think sometimes it's that some women are very direct, and maybe we are offended by that directness, whereas the perception is that the same directness in a man might be taken differently, right? And so I don't know if the advice then would be to read the room a little more. Because that seems kind of unfair as well, right? Like sometimes
I think
here I am, I'm directly telling you the information so that you understand, and I'm trying to be as clear as possible. But, you know, what's the issue with that then? You know, like how do you get around that, or how do you make that better?
I don't know if you do, right? I mean, it's it's a kind of a class and cultural difference right now, right? And to me, after being in practice with Angela, I mean, I think it's on the guy, right? For a man to criticize a woman for saying something that he just praised a man for basically saying the same thing, it's like, are we being censored? I mean, that's bullshit, right? I mean, the man in the conversation has to understand the environment that he's in. And it's taken me a while. And, you know, the man is an evolving species, right? I mean, in the end, you know, there's still that gorilla in us that is hard to get rid of. But it is a conscious effort to change the way you do talk and accept the way women talk to you in a common environment. It's basically as simple as that. And it's still a challenge, right? And I can be politically incorrect here or whatever, but I'm almost taking it to the point where the whole Black Lives Matter, right? If the white guy goes up to the black guy and he says, hey man, I'm feeling your pain. I know what you're feeling. I can tell you there is no way that we know what that black man is feeling. No way. And to even say that is offensive, right? And it's almost the same with men and women in architecture, say, right? If a man thinks he knows what the woman in architecture is going through and how they're being offended at certain times and such, we have no idea. It's a learning experience. I try to learn about it every single day. And I don't know how you shift the paradigm in light speed, right? It's a slow moving ship. It's a big boat that's trying to turn back and go the other way.
Yeah, I think though, I'm going to circle back to the mentorship a little bit, because I think that you'll find your authenticity if you stay closely in communication with your peers. So there's times where Brad and I will come back and Brad will say, oh shoot, did I offend that person, right? We actually think a lot about how we come off to people. I'm not saying it's daily, but we're conscious of the fact that so much of who we are is how we're perceived. And so we've learned through the years, I encourage people to talk to each other and ask, how did I just come off, right? Because sometimes you just don't know. Did I come off authentic? Did I come off a little too pushy or too soft? You know, and Brad and I will do this. It's not just a woman thing. Brad will say, oof, I might have crossed the line there. And I'm like, yeah, we probably should pull back and not go there next time. And, or, you know, we reinforce each other. We kind of, sometimes we save each other. We're in the middle. One of us is rabbit trailing like right now, and he's supposed to come in and actually save the moment. So.
I just wanted to chime in quickly too, just coming from again, a younger professional perspective and hearing that question. I think Brad and Angela, what you both have is trust, honor, and respect. And so I think you both are able to have these conversations, whereas the person asking the question, this is my recommendation, that you try to build the honor, the trust, and the respect with that counterpart that you feel like you may be having this challenge with. And I think that's how we build unity and, you know, be able to have those conversations and still, again, be authentic and not have to worry about, and should not have to worry about, I'm going to correct myself, being a woman or being a man, and owning that conversation or dialogue or how you approach that.
Bingo. Wow.
Yeah, well said.
It is.
Great summary.
It's respect,
Mhm.
honor, and care and trust, right? Totally.
Totally.
And
Let me, we're nearing the end of our time. Does anyone else have any question that they would like to ask our panelists before we log off? We're at, what's our time? 5:14?
are you talking to me?
No, sorry.
Oh,
I'm asking our audience if they have anything.
Yeah.
I did get that one text, and
Yeah.
then if you're too shy, you can always text me.
I have one hand raised here. I am
Okay,
trying
good.
to figure out how to. I don't see her name popping up on the screen or how to unmute.
I have.
There she is.
Amy,
There she is.
you're able to mute.
I see one question too. Is there,
I don't know how. It's not letting me unmute Amy.
I
Am-
see
am
one
I
question
unmuted?
coming through.
Am I unmuted now, Anna?
I can hear you. Yes, yes, you are.
Okay, so I first of all want to say thank you guys for hosting this and also inviting Brad to participate in it. You know, some of my frustration as a woman in the profession of architecture is that we're having a lot of these conversations and we're not involving men in them. And how do we solve for men and women to better celebrate our differences and communicate better if we don't include the men in those conversations? So I just wanted to say that. I have a lot of thoughts, so I'll try to see how I best can get the most out of this. I would say, you know, I guess I'm looking for, with Angela and Brad, they have this dynamic of men and women to kind of balance each other in their partnership. But I know there's a few of us that are women only owned firms and don't have male partners. I know Anna, there might be a few on here. I can't see the full list of people on here, but I guess for those other participants, and then maybe for Angela, how would you do things differently now if you were just starting out after all you've learned after 30 years to be the most, I guess, effective as without having a man partner after when you're going after work?
Wow. Well, I think, wow. Oh, that's a big one. Depends on what kind of work you're going after, right? If you're gonna go after work, you need to practice that work, right? You need to be able to practice the specialization, the awareness. I learned so much coming up with Jack and Brad. I had that benefit, but there was a point where I diverted. You know, I wanted to go a different direction with my sensibilities, and so I would say you have to immerse yourself in the excellence of that building type or that client type. You have to probably, you know, call me or call somebody who's gone before you. I probably would have reached out more to those who have more experience to gain that experience. Does that make sense? And I think you also, as a woman, you just have to know you have what it takes and have that confidence and assert that in a way that's unassuming and not chest beating, but just sincere. And I think that if you, again, I don't think it's so much the woman, I think it's excellence. I think you have to have passion to do things well, do design well, do business well in this profession, any profession. You have to be committed and you have to be willing to make those phone calls to people, whether it's clients or peers, and get yourself involved. It just enriches you as a human being. I didn't do it with women because most of my peers, Eric Strain, Wyndham Kinsey, Brad Van Wart, you know, I didn't have a lot of women to bounce things around with, but you know, we have this organization, and I'll say if just that came out of this organization, where we could really build each other's confidence and understanding and awareness of how to be better at what we do, I think that would have that would go a long way as an organization.
Yeah, I think I usually just call other female owners. That's where I go on that.
Yeah,
I don't
and,
have,
you know,
I
I
can't
don't know
talk to
if we
men
should
sometimes.
stop. Let's say you guys who have, frankly, I think men are great. I mean, if you have questions and you want to get into, you know, school architecture, you know, you call the most open architect down there, you know, you call Rick Sellers, you call Wyndham Kinsey, develop those relationships with your peers, because they are your mentors. We are each other's contemporary. You know, what's working, what's not. I'm frustrated with this. You might want to try that. I mean, you just have to immerse yourself in the process of getting where you want to go.
And it's probably where the AIA ought to be more involved, right? The whole idea of being a resource for a sole woman proprietor. Like, what kind of resources can she get by going to the AIA? You know, which in Las Vegas was totally run by the most wonderful woman in the world, right? I mean, Randy Levine was, when she entered the first day of her job, I don't think there was a woman in sight. She was the only one.
There's me and Monica.
Yeah. I mean, Randy Levine is the sole.
Monica was still in college.
Does that answer your question? I think it was Amy. I mean, I think it's just be open to people being open. If anybody called me, I mean, I would love to share my thoughts and be somebody's kind of comrade, right? I mean, you need the camaraderie.
Mhm.
I agree.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it does. I think there's plenty of women now to call on, where I've gone through my 20+ year career and can't say that I have ever worked underneath or with a woman as a mentor, but I think that's changing. It seems like that's changing.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you. That's not easy to do. 20 years of that. You're doing something right. You're still here. You're still doing it.
Wondering if you have a comment about this. Keith's asking your opinion on, is there sexism in the newer millennial generation? Like, maybe because the millennials have a different background, they're coming up differently than how how some others of us have come up. Like, what are you, and maybe that's more of a question for Lauren. I don't know. You know, what do you see? Are you seeing less of that? I see a variety. I do see less of it in younger men.
So is the question, I guess, just asking for clarification, is the question about, I believe the term is like generationalism, where there is some sort of bias against, or is it how are we approaching sex?
I think how millennials are approaching the difference between the sexes. Like, are you seeing a trend where it's more like men and women of the millennial and younger generation? Are they just more open to neutral gender versus, I guess, really seeing, oh, there are a bunch of women talking about whatever, and are the women saying, oh, they're just a bunch of men doing, you know, whatever. But I don't know. My experience has been that they seem more engaged with one another than we were.
Yeah, I'd say hands down. I can have a short answer for you. I think hands down, if I'm not stereotyping here, but if you look at the baby boomers, the Gen Xers, the millennials, and I think there's a Gen Z now, right? Which we haven't seen too much of that yet. But I think it is hands down noticeably different.
Mm-hmm.
They are definitely less focused on the difference. Women, even the women coming out of school. I don't know how many of you are, you know, below the age of 25, men or women. I think you could speak to it. It's just, you were raised differently. You were raised in a different cultural outlook. And I just think they are a way less segregated, quite a bit more inclusive, to the point where they don't even notice the difference. If you come to the table and you've got you've got something to offer, they're there to listen. And if anything, the millennials are more critical of you not having the capability, right? It has nothing to do with gender.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think everyone, of course, has a different perspective. You know, this is all subjective, of course. My personal opinion is, and this is something that I value personally, so it's my own bias, truth be told, but I do focus on, are there women in leadership? Are there women in leadership at the senior management level? That is something that I am extremely cognizant of, but it is because of my background and being in conversations and organizations and groups around women in leadership. And so that's just something that I personally value, that is very important to me. I think, you know, firms are also looking too at legacy planning and how are we preparing for the next generation of leadership. And, you know, that is something that we are seeing too, more and more of it as a trend around just in cultural or firm internal culture conversations. But I do think Angela is right in that, you know, we are a little bit more brazen to, you know, critique or
Ooh,
to
brazen.
call out, you know, if we're seeing, you know, if we're seeing something, I think generally we're a little bit more of our own advocates, or you know, we're open to, you know, having that conversation or to bringing it up or addressing it. But I do think that, you know, our generation is also very unique in that we're not, you know, we also too are of the understanding that, you know, there are complexities to gender and how we have those conversations today versus, you know, even 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, we're just in a different time and so much has changed. And so, you know, I know too at SMPS, we have just launched a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force. And, you know, we're having these conversations from a membership level at headquarters nationally to, of course, you know, internally within our staff. But we, you know, we're definitely having these types of conversations, and just, you know, of the realization that how we even approach or discuss gender is completely different today than what it was or has been. So
Yeah, and I appreciate that. So change, you know, just takes a long time. That will be it for our questions, because we're at 5:25. And really, thank you so much. What do we have? Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you to the panelists. And yes, thank you for coming out and having a chat with us. And for Lauren for staying up. Oh, it's only 8:30. Okay. You're just working late. So thank you for doing that.
that's
Appreciate
right.
that a lot.
Monica,
And
thank
Angela
you.
and Brad.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
You guys have done a great job just right out of the chute for 21 to start with something like this and putting
Yeah, thanks.
together with Lauren. I think it's really quite insightful that you saw this as a topic that would be worthwhile. And I think we're honored that you chose us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very
Me,
much.
I am very pleased that you said yes, all three of you. One of the things that Lauren said something about legacy planning, and Brad mentioned something about support at the AIA, and those go right along with Amy's questions. And I think that maybe we need to look at how we can address that as well. So how, you know, we are already talking about how we plan to contribute to information to other firms and what they may pick off the different tiers of information that we're gathering throughout the year. But maybe we do need to do something else in addition to in addition to that, you know, like how does Amy go to AIA Las Vegas for some sort of support? Like, what do we need? And that would also go for me as well. And you know, especially the younger firms that are coming up, like how are we going to deal with that? So,
Yeah,
so good. Thank you.
Monica, I'd like to crossbreed us a little bit more. I would hope, you know, that the leadership that's going on from the north and the south, you know, you don't just have your local chapter. You know, we're here, and I'd like to see us being able to really cross the boundary a little bit at that halfway point and have more inclusion with our chapters. We seem to still be segregated, and it's natural. I understand why, you know, but maybe we can talk more about inclusion at the state level.
Yeah. And I was just thinking that we can have another conversation offline about how maybe we do that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Good synergy matters helps lots. Thank you for that. So thank you again to the panelists. Appreciate you guys joining us, and please join us next month for our conversation on pathways to architecture. That will be in April, though. That'll be April. Next month we're doing leadership.
My bad, I forgot.
Yeah, it's okay. That's okay. I caught it.
Sorry.
Live and in person. So thank you for that reminder that we're going to talk about pathways to architecture in 2 months. Next month we're gonna sponsor the AIA membership meeting. So join us to hear Monica Chada from Chicago talk about some of that. Who, by the way, was at Studio Gang. So just since you mentioned that a bit ago. Okay. Thank you again, all. I appreciate you. We will hopefully see many of you next month and in subsequent months. Good night. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you all.
Thanks so much, guys.
Peace out.